Meghan is spiraling. What exactly do you mean by that? And what are your sources telling you about her mental state and the happiness of the couple?
There is tension over the children, and it's because Harry doesn't want the kids to be used. If you then start shilling them out on a weekly basis on your Instagram to sell more scented candles, it does look a bit rum. In terms of spiraling, this is someone who's very busy, extremely active in a number of different areas, and yet it's scattergun. It made her look desperate and clingy. We come back to this insistence of hers on being the victim, on how awful things have been for her. I mean, she has a momentum without direction.
The cost per competitor at the 2025 Vancouver Whistler Invictus Games was $118,352. That is the figure produced by dividing the game's total raised budget of $63.2 million by the 534 athletes who competed. Of that 63.2 million, 30 million came from the Canadian and British Columbia governments, which is to say from the Canadian taxpayer. The grants to actual veterans during the same period were cut by 63%. The reserves of the Invictus Games Foundation grew during the same period to £2.3 million. Some staff at the foundation were paid up to £130,000 annually, which is the very top of the relevant salary range. In comparison, the German equivalent of the Invictus Games operates on approximately $200,000 total. The American Wounded Warrior Games operates on approximately $2 million total. The Invictus Games operates at an order of magnitude greater cost than either equivalent for results that, on the public record, are not commensurate with the spending differential. This is the analysis Paula Froelich has now placed on the public record through her Substack and through her interviews on the Royalist podcast hosted by Tom Sykes. Froelich is not a junior commentator. She is a former New York Post columnist with 3 decades of investigative reporting experience, and she has been collaborating with the Curious Pilot, also known as Rachel of the Montecito Minimalist channel, on the deep examination of the Invictus financial structure.
If we look at Birmingham in the past, and the most recent one was the one in Vancouver, all right? They had raised $63.2 million. Now, 30 million of that came from Canada and British Columbia governments. So it's basically came out of the British taxpayers' pockets, all right? There were 534 competitors. That is it. So basically, if you do the math, the cost per competitor was $118,352. It's wild.
The Birmingham 2026 Games are the next iteration of the model. The structural picture there is even more concerning. Where the Vancouver Games secured 44 corporate sponsors, including Boeing, the Birmingham Games has so far secured only 11, and all of them are listed anonymously. The Birmingham One Year to Go event, taking place in July 2026, has Harry attending in person, specifically because the sponsorship and ticket pipelines have not filled, and his physical presence is required to drum up support that the Games cannot otherwise generate. The structural problem at Birmingham is compounded by the city's actual condition. Birmingham was recently in a bankruptcy proceeding. The city is still in the position of being unable to reliably collect rubbish from the streets. Public services in Birmingham are visibly under strain. Into this context, the Invictus Games has been allocated a £26.6 million grant, signed off by the previous Conservative government and now being executed under the Labour administration. The political cost of channeling that level of public money into a Games event in a city that cannot collect its own rubbish is structurally significant. The Labour government has therefore been operating under quiet pressure to ensure that the Games proceeds without political embarrassment, which is part of the explanation for the 4.5-month delay on Harry's UK security review.
The money's not there. People are really angry because, as you and I have talked about it before, Birmingham just got out of bankruptcy and they still can't pick up the trash on the streets.
Yeah, it's astonishing. And Paula did a fantastic deep dive on this with Rachel, the Curious Pilot, better known to some of us as the creator of the Montecito minimalist brand. So
the political resolution of the protection question has to be calibrated for an outcome that allows the Birmingham Games to take place without the Sussex household becoming a separate political problem. Froelic's investigation has surfaced a structural detail about the Invictus organisational design that warrants attention. The Invictus Games Foundation operates as an umbrella organisation. Each individual City Games is a separate operating entity that licenses the Invictus brand from the foundation. The licensing fee is redacted in the public documentation. Other transparency-relevant figures across the Canada Games budget were also redacted, including elements that Froelich and Rachel have characterised as resembling redacted CIA documents in their visual presentation. There is no commercial sensitivity argument that justifies redaction at this scale for a charity. The structural function of the redaction is to prevent the licensing fee structure and the related cash flows from being scrutinised by donors, journalists, and members of the public. The staffing situation at the Birmingham Games provides the most direct operational signal that the project is in difficulty.
So I did write for News Nation a really extraordinary story where I spoke to people who had been contacted by headhunters for the games in Birmingham and for the overall umbrella Invictus Games Foundation. And of course, at first they wouldn't say who it was for. They described the role, and it was for head of marketing, which is a major position. And finally, one of the people said, "Is this for Invictus Games?" They said, "We can." They said, "Is Prince Harry involved?" And they said, "Well," and she goes, "Because if he is, I am not interested. My reputation is also at stake."
Froelich has reported through News Nation on multiple cases in which professional candidates contacted by headhunters for senior roles, including head of marketing for the Games or for the Foundation, declined the opportunity once they learned Harry was involved. One candidate's stated reason was that her professional reputation was at stake and she was not willing to associate herself with the Sussex public profile. The headhunters did not call her back. This is a structural problem because senior marketing leadership is the function that drives sponsorship, acquisition, and the inability to fill that role 1 year out from a major international event is the operational signal that the Games are not on the trajectory the Foundation requires. The pattern in which professional candidates decline to associate themselves with Harry-led organisations is structurally important because it generalises beyond the immediate Birmingham staffing question. A senior executive's reputation is built over years and is the asset that secures the next role. Aligning that reputation with an organisation whose public conduct is documented as confrontational, whose former chair has filed a defamation case in the High Court, whose principal extracts royal status references in product naming and then quietly removes them, and whose financial transparency has been the subject of a deepening investigation, is a career risk that experienced professionals decline to take. The professional ecosystem has reached its own verdict on the Sussex-affiliated organisations, and the verdict is that working in them produces reputational liability rather than reputational asset. Froelich's broader Invictus thesis is that a charity which functions as a personal public relations vehicle for its founder is structurally distinct from a charity which functions as an effective delivery vehicle for its stated cause. The Invictus Games has become, in her framing, the former rather than the latter. Harry is using the Games to position himself as a quasi-royal figure performing public service. The actual veterans the Games claims to serve are receiving a contracting share of the resources raised in their name. The cost per competitor of $118,000 at Vancouver is the metric that captures the operational distortion. A Games experience is not, on any reasonable accounting, worth that level of resource per participating veteran, when the same money applied directly to veteran care could fund prosthetics, exoskeletons, accessible vehicles, mental health therapy, physiotherapy, service dogs, and housing modifications at scale.
Force a meeting with the king really in Birmingham next year, because Harry's coming to Birmingham this year to do a 1 year to go event, but then the actual games themselves take place next year. The king is going to be invited to open the games on the stage with Harry. Head of states have done this in other countries. Tom Bower seems pretty adamant that King Charles won't do it, not least for fear of offending Prince William. But it is going to be very, very strange. We're going to have Harry back in England for potentially as much as a week, potentially longer in July, going around doing charity events, positioning himself very much as a royal. And
Rachel of the Curious Pilot channel has done the alternative allocation calculation in detail, and the results map sharply against the games event allocation as a question of social return on charitable investment. Tom Bower, in his recent book on the Sussex household, has published the analysis that Harry's primary motive for attending the Birmingham Games is to engineer a public meeting with King Charles on the opening stage. Heads of state in other host countries have opened the Invictus Games at this kind of event. Charles, as British head of state, would be the obvious figure to perform that role. Bower's reporting is that Charles will not perform that role, in significant part because of the offence such a public alignment would cause Prince William, who has now structurally separated himself from the Sussex household at the institutional level. The Birmingham Games is therefore positioned to be a Sussex-led event without the institutional royal cover that would have given it weight in earlier years. The transition from royal-coded to Sussex-coded charity work is the structural pattern across all of Harry's charitable vehicles, and the trajectory is consistent. The centre bail situation provides the parallel case study.
No, and in fact, as we've discussed with Senta Bali, and part of the problem, Dr. Sophie Chandaka did a brand assessment, and it came back that Harry was, while he was head of Senta Bali, he was their biggest liability as well. So was Meghan. And I think that a lot of people are not interested in donating to something that Harry is the head of, not least of all because, again, where is the money going? And the shine seems to have come off this very worthy cause. And Harry is using it kind of as his own PR firm. Look, I do the Invictus Games. Look, I support Warriors, which, again, great. However, there are a lot of other places that do this, and they do it better.
Dr. Sophie Chandauka, who served as chair of Centre Bail and who has now filed a defamation claim in the London High Court, performed a brand assessment during her tenure that returned the finding that Harry was the charity's biggest liability and that Meghan was the second biggest. That assessment is the explanation for the Audi sponsorship withdrawal after Meghan reportedly demanded a $1 million fee from Audi to continue the existing relationship. Audi declined and walked away. Centre Bail's broader sponsorship pipeline contracted in parallel, and the legal action is now active. Africa Parks, a separate Harry-affiliated initiative, is in the middle of an investigation following findings that Africa Parks rangers committed sexual assault against local tribespeople in regions including the Congo. Archwell Philanthropies has been substantially shuttered. Each of the charity vehicles Harry has been associated with since Megxit has either contracted or come into legal or operational difficulty. Invictus is the last remaining flagship. Tom Sykes' royal roast this week is directed at Prince William, and the structural argument is worth presenting because it is not an attack from the Sussex critic camp.
Shall we say, the most obvious of which is Dartmoor Prison. So William owns the land on which Dartmoor Prison is built. He collects around about $1.5 million a year on the lease for Dartmoor Prison, and Dartmoor Prison is empty. And the reason that Dartmoor Prison is empty is because it has dangerous levels of a toxic gas called radon, which of course is very much associated with the kind of granite rock that you get on Dartmoor, which is an area in the southwest of England. So the prison operated, for the benefit of the state, built on land owned by the Prince of Wales, which many people would argue is actually owned by the state, and that the ownership structure of Duchy of Cornwall is all wrong. He's collecting 1.5 million a year for that. Now,
Sykes is a centrist royal commentator who has been generally supportive of the Cambridge family. His criticism is that William is making a strategic mistake by resisting full transparency on his personal taxes. The Sunday Times this weekend reported that William pays approximately $7 million annually in income tax, placing him in the top 0.002% of UK taxpayers. The figure is not, however, an officially declared figure. It is the Sunday Times' best estimate, with the palace having reportedly tipped them the wink that the figure is approximately correct. The constitutional position is that the Crown and the heir apparent are not required to pay income tax. The late Queen broke the convention voluntarily after the Windsor Castle fire, in recognition of the public funding that restored what was a private residence. Charles continued the voluntary disclosure as Prince of Wales. Since becoming king, Charles has stopped making the full declaration. William has never declared his. Sykes' argument is that the British public's tolerance for shrouded royal finances is contracting. Royal wills are sealed for 100 years, while every other will in the United Kingdom is a matter of public record. The Channel 4 and Sunday Times investigation last year documented that the Duchy of Cornwall, which is William's primary income source, has been charging rent to public bodies, including lifeboat stations, town halls, and school playing fields. Some of those arrangements were renegotiated after the investigation. Significant ones remain. The most striking is Dartmoor Prison. The land on which Dartmoor Prison is built is owned by the Duchy of Cornwall. William collects approximately $1.5 million annually on the lease. Dartmoor Prison is currently empty because it has dangerous levels of radon gas, a naturally occurring radioactive gas associated with the granite rock that defines the Dartmoor landscape.
I think it's probably quite easy to get yourself into Anna Wintour's bad books. I mean, let's be fair to Meghan. I know she's not everyone's cup of tea, but there are a lot of people out there who Anna Wintour doesn't like. And then the whole manner of Megxit and what they said to the royal family is really the opposite of what Anna Wintour stands for as a person and as a Brit and as a Brit abroad. And I'm thinking about when she famously, for the no one could believe their eyes, the Queen attended a fashion show and Anna Wintour sat next to her, and Anna Wintour had made that happen. So Anna Wintour is an absolutely staunch royalist, extremely keen on dignity. She's not going to be going on some kind of grubby Netflix tell-all, pretending to curtsy and thinking that's funny. That is not cool.
William is collecting $1.5 million annually for the lease of an empty prison built on land where the surrounding geology produces a known hazardous gas. Sykes' position is that this arrangement is structurally indefensible at a moment when transparency demands are rising and when a Prime Minister has now publicly raised the question of monarchy abolition. The Alison Boshoff segment of the Royalist podcast then provides the most current update on the Sussex Hollywood network position. Boshoff is the Daily Mail showbiz reporter who has been covering the Sussexes, specifically because the Mail's royal correspondents found the Sussex story had become primarily a media and show business story rather than a royal one. Her sourcing is in California, and her reporting in the Mail this past week became the central document of the Hollywood rejection thesis. The new structural element Boshoff adds in the Royalist interview is the alienation of Ari Emanuel. Emanuel is the chief executive of the WME-IMG Endeavour talent agency conglomerate and is widely regarded as the most powerful talent agent in Hollywood. The Sussex household has now alienated Emanuel through the same operational pattern that has alienated the Vogue, Bezos, Sarandos and Kardashian networks. The structural meaning of the Emanuel alienation is consequential because Emanuel is the figure who could plausibly have negotiated a senior commercial relationship for the Sussexes with any major studio or distributor. With Emanuel offside, the standard route into the highest tier of Hollywood deal-making is closed.
So in terms of spiraling, what my person was talking about was this sense of momentum without direction. Okay, so this is someone who's very busy, extremely active in a number of different areas, and yet it's scattergun. It's, you know, one month it's I'm on the cover of Harper's Bazaar. I'm not really discussing actually my lifestyle brand at all. I don't even mention my upcoming, at that point, holiday special TV show. Not even mentioned. So I'm not a TV star. I'm not mentioned that I've just done an acting job, my first in years. No, I'm in the fashion space. And then, you know, a couple of months before, suddenly we're all very surprised. She's making a cameo as herself. Well, it's not really acting, in some Amazon movie.
The combination of Emmanuel, Wintour, the Bezos household, the Sarandos household, the Kardashian network, and the Netflix executive layer represents the entire infrastructure of senior commercial gatekeeping in American entertainment, fashion, and digital media. Each node has now closed. The Emmanuel position matters specifically because his agency conglomerate, in addition to representing actors and athletes, also operates IMG, which represents fashion, talent, and licensed sport, and Endeavor, which integrates the various business units. The reach of the alienation extends through the conglomerate's holdings, which include the Miss Universe organization, UFC partnerships, and the IMG fashion division. A figure who is alienated from Emmanuel personally is alienated from the operational reach of the conglomerate. The Sussex commercial project has therefore lost not just the personal relationship with Emmanuel, but the entire downstream network that the conglomerate's deal-making produces. This is structurally different from losing a single relationship. It is losing a hub with all the connections the hub previously enabled. Boshoff also provides the operational detail of the Kardashian rupture. The Sussex team allegedly distributed consent forms at a Kardashian event the Sussexes attended, and then briefed that the Kardashians had agreed to certain photographic releases.
So Anna Wintour is the top of the tree for fashion. They've alienated her. Kardashians are the top of the tree for, social media. They've alienated them. And they just made themselves, it was slightly embarrassing, the optics of that party, and they made it 1,000 times worse. Okay, now. And then don't forget, they've also alienated Ari Emanuel, who is the top of the tree of Hollywood agents. And they then also alienated Ted Sarandos and the leadership at Netflix, which is, the richest streamer, which has won the streaming wars. So, that's pretty good going.
When journalists called the Kardashians' representatives to verify, the representative stated that no such consent forms had been distributed by the Kardashian team. The Kardashian sisters subsequently appeared on one of the family podcasts and stated that they had wanted certain photographs taken down because the timing was the eve of Remembrance Day, and that they would never publish material against the explicit non-consent of those involved. The dispute, as Boshoff frames it, was a structural rupture rather than a casual disagreement. The Kardashian-Jenner network is the most powerful social media ecosystem on the planet. Alienating it removes the largest available distribution channel for any consumer brand the Sussex household might attempt to operate. The psychological framing Boshoff offers through her California sourcing is the main character framing. The Sussex couple, in the analysis of their interlocutors, operates with the belief that they are the main characters in any room they enter. When they encounter someone who is structurally the actual main character, the conflict can only be resolved by the actual main character disengaging. This pattern has now been documented across the Wintour, Sanchez, Avant, Emmanuel, Kardashian, and Sarandos relationships. Each of these figures is, in their own commercial sphere, the structural main character. None of them has accepted the Sussex framing of themselves as the main character of any shared interaction. Each has therefore disengaged. The accumulation of these disengagements is now the structural reality of the Sussex household's commercial position. Paula Froelich offered a counterfactual reflection during the Royalist segment that captures the missed opportunity dimension of the 6-year project. As of the 6th of January 2020, the day Megxit was announced, the Sussex couple held a strong hand. They were genuinely loved by the British public. Harry was widely regarded as the more accessible of the two senior Cambridge brothers. Meghan was beautiful, accomplished, and broadly admired. The couple's public goodwill at that moment in Frolics's framing was substantial. Had they followed the Queen's advice and not commercialised the Royal Association, had they lived off their not inconsiderable private fortune through conservative investments, had they accepted a reduced public profile and a private life, they would now be operating as a powerful sub-brand of the British royal family in the United States, with significant cultural influence and a sustainable financial structure. Princess Madeleine of Sweden offers a comparable model. The model was available. The choice not to take it was a strategic choice with documented consequences. The state visit Alison Boshoff and Tom Sykes both attended in New York illustrated the specific opportunity cost. 5 years earlier, the social network attending the events would have included the Sussexes as central figures. The state dinner attendees this past week included Charlotte Tilbury and the broader British community in America. Rory McIlroy, who had performed the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge at Meghan's request, attended with his wife. Guy Pelly, Harry's close boyhood friend, with whom he was photographed at the 2005 Nazi costume incident, attended with his wife. The figures who had been Sussex friends in the original orbit attended the institutional event at which the Sussexes were not present. The Sussex public statement on the absence framed taxpayer-funded travel as an explanation, suggesting it would not have been appropriate for the king to make a side trip to Montecito to meet them. The framing inverted the institutional structure. The king is on a state visit. He does not travel to private homes for meetings with private citizens. The private citizens travel to the public engagements at which the head of state is performing his function. The Sussex framing of the inversion captured exactly the main character pathology that Boshoff has identified as the structural pattern. Princess Charlotte's 11th birthday this week reinforced the contrast. William and Catherine released professionally photographed images and a video of Charlotte playing cricket on the beach, interacting with family animals, and engaging with the natural environment. The Sandringham approach is to release controlled, age-appropriate, professionally executed content that reduces the paparazzi market for unauthorized photographs because the authorized supply is sufficient. The structural effect is that George and Charlotte attend birthday parties, play sport on the school sidelines while their parents cheer, and live what is operationally a comparatively normal upper-class British childhood. By controlling the visual record, the parents have eliminated the commercial incentive for paparazzi to harass the children because authorized photographs satisfy the public demand. The Sussex approach is the inverse. The children's faces are obscured in most images. The parents publicly frame this as a protective decision against exploitation. The operational reality is that the partial visibility creates what marketing professionals call a curiosity gap. The audience knows the children exist, sees fragmentary references to them, and is implicitly invited to maintain interest in seeing more. The curiosity gap is precisely the marketing mechanism that drives engagement on platforms like Instagram. The Sussex children, in this framing, are being used as the engagement-driving curiosity gap of the Sussex commercial brand, while the parents publicly frame the partial obscuring as protection. The visibility control logic is operating in reverse from how the Cambridge logic is operating, and the audience is now sophisticated enough to read the difference. The Charlotte birthday content lands as warm. The Sussex children content lands as exploitative. The structural reading is correct. The closing observation is that the convergence of these stories produces a coherent picture in which the Sussex household has now alienated the entire infrastructure on which its commercial project depends. Hollywood gatekeeping through Emmanuel, fashion gatekeeping through Wintour and the Met Gala, social media distribution through the Kardashian network, streaming content through Sarandos and Bagaria, tech billionaire wives through Sanchez, tennis and high-profile celebrity friendship through Williams, charity sponsorship through Audi, and the broader Sente Bale donor base. Institutional royal positioning through Charles, William, and the King's geographical Christmas card list. Each network has closed. The remaining commercial assets, As Ever and the Invictus Games, are themselves now in financial difficulty, with As Ever in continued test and learn mode after a year of operation, and Invictus showing the staffing, sponsorship and transparency problems Paula Froelich has now documented. The runway, as previously established, is approximately 5 years against the current burn rate. The verdict has been entered. The audience is reading correctly. The next phase, in which the financial pressure produces visible operational consequences, is now underway.